Okay, so assignment 4, sports coaching, is following on from you planning and delivering a sports coaching session. And now we're looking at your ability to evaluate your performance and evaluate your coaching in terms of both your planning and the delivery of the actual session. And you can see from this image, which is on the assignment brief, that it's very much a cyclical process. It goes round in an ongoing cycle, in that you plan something, you deliver and perform it. So you would coach your session. You'd then have a thinking process of trying to review what went well, what didn't go so well, what do you as a coach need to improve on before you deliver your next session, and how would you go about improving those elements. And that's exactly what you need to do for this assignment. So very quickly on to show you the actual assignment brief document that you'll find, starting as normal with the mark sheet. You guys fill in this top section of data here. I will then complete the grading and the feedback to yourselves. The student review sheet, as you know, you check through this list and then complete a review yourself, giving yourself a number grade. And then on to the actual assignment brief, giving you a scenario, the assessment criteria, and you must of course sign the learner declaration. Check out the list of tasks that you need to do it with a little bit more explanation. The unit specification, you always check this, and then actually the document which in this case you'll be working in the assignment brief. So several sections that you need to complete. Wherever you see the click here to enter text is where you obviously write your work. And you can see here I've broken it down into a few sections, so writing and describing the strengths of your session, write the strength there, and then do a description of linking to this guidance here. And here's the areas for your improvement, or your weaknesses. So what was a weakness, explain it, and then talk about how you would develop that weakness, and I'll go through that a little bit more detail in a second. So as I said, I'll go through the specific requirements of each section a little bit more in a moment, but just notice that there are 4 strengths that I had listed and 4 areas for improvement that you'll need to work through. So any less than that would be unacceptable. It might be that you have more elements that you want to include. So let's look more closely at the actual requirements in this task. The unit specification, we're actually looking at purely the review element of this unit spec. So did your aims and objectives work? What feedback did you get from a variety of sources? How would you what were the things that you needed to improve? And what would a plan be in order for you to develop those weaknesses? And what might be some issues associated with developing them? 3 assessment criteria. So doing a review and identifying, so that's kind of stating strengths and weaknesses. Evaluating the planning and delivery with suggestions of how to improve. So what was good and bad, or not bad, but could be improved upon. How might you go about improving these things? And for distinction, you need, this is the key word, justify your suggestions of how to improve. Why might you do something? Why might that be effective in improving something over perhaps a different strategy? Here's the scenario. So your teacher has asked you as a sports leader to review your delivery of your session in order to be sure that you're going to be good at working with primary school children and able to develop yourself as a coach. So task 1, 2 bits to task 1, both pass level criteria. Review the aims and objectives. So in assignment 3, in planning your session, you'll have decided what you're actually trying to achieve, and here is where you give a description of did you actually achieve them, and to what extent. This isn't, massive detail. This is pass level, and it's really just checking back to what you originally intended to do and sort of summarising if you think you did it or not. The second part then is looking at what we call a SWOT analysis, and I've done the table here. So this is actually in your template. So SWOT, you can see, stands for strengths, weaknesses. I've put areas for achievement, but weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Strengths is clearly putting what did you do well. Weaknesses or areas for improvement are clearly what wasn't so effective in your coaching or your planning. And remember, when you're reviewing your session, it's about your planning and delivery. not just the delivery. Opportunities, well, this talks about if there are areas for improvement, what opportunities are there for you to develop those weaknesses? So it could be there's a level 1 coaching course available. That would be an opportunity to improve. Could be there's a club local to you, and observing a coach would be an opportunity to improve. So what things can you do positively to help develop your coaching? And threats is kind of the opposite of that. What things might hinder you developing your coaching? So it's all very well saying there's a level 1 coaching qualification available, but a threat might be the expense of that, because actually these courses can be well over £100. So that would be a threat. So for PASS, you had to describe strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Task 2 then goes in a little bit more depth and has 3 elements to it. Identifying your strengths, so describing your strengths and why they were effective. And I've just put an example here of the sort of PASS level description you might have for describing strengths. So whilst delivering the session, I spoke loudly so that the group could clearly hear my instructions. This meant they could understand what they had to do. So that's the impact that that strength had. And it helps that I had planned where I stood. So this was part of your planning. You planned where to stand to be able to be heard by everybody. Really straightforward, and you have to do that 4 times for that part of the task. Then for PASS and merit, so a little bit more explanation needed here, you're going to look at areas for improvement, and I suggest you take one at a time. So identify a sort of a weakness that could be improved, and sort of do the same thing. What was the weakness? Describe it. Describe the impact it had on it. So why wasn't it so good, and how did it affect your session? So I, as an example here, suggested I hadn't researched the teaching points enough, and I didn't state 3 clear things to do. This meant that during the session, participants were not executing the skill correctly and were confused about how to do it. So what was the problem, and what was the impact on your session, and give some explanation to that. Maybe give an example of something that happened in your session. Really good merit level work. So we've established something that wasn't so good and needs to be developed, and you need to now include this as part of a development plan. Again, PASS merit at this level. So now we're looking at how to improve, and you might look back at your SWOT analysis and look back particularly at the opportunities section. So I've got a weakness. What opportunities are there for me to specifically improve that weakness? And here's an example that might help you. So in order to improve my knowledge of teaching points for the skill, I could do more detailed research on YouTube. I could also contact the nearest, whatever sport it happened to be, club, and speak to a level 2 coach, perhaps arrange to observe some of their coaching sessions of this skill. I need to clarify my understanding of the skill and decide on 3 key teaching points. And those are strategies that can improve that weakness and the impact it will have. For distinction, remember the key word was justify. So I've said what I'll try to do to improve my weakness. I'm going to observe somebody, I'm going to visit my local club, I'm going to do more research on YouTube. And the justification really comes from saying specifically, why is that going to work? Or how is that strategy better than other strategies? And why is it so important also to actually improve that weakness? So here's my example of distinction level justification. So observing a qualified and experienced coach will help me develop, as I can model their language and learn the skill teaching points better myself. I can be better observing someone rather than books, so it can be better. So when you watch somebody, you might get more from just trying to read it from books and hope that you understand what it means. Improving my delivery of teaching points will improve the clarity for participants and give them specific guidance. So rather than me waffling on, if I give them 3 clear teaching points, they will remember those 3 things. And if they're short and brief, that makes it even more helpful. So in this distinction section, I've justified why I've suggested to make those improvements and use those strategies to improve. One last thing then, your development plan needs to kind of bear in mind that your methods to improve need to be SMART target related. So what this means, you may be familiar with this already, what this means is you need to be quite specific with not only how you're going to improve, what strategies you'll employ, but how long you're going to anticipate taking to make those improvements, and how will you know if you've improved? What will your improvement look like? And here's a little table to give you some greater explanation. So SMART targets, it's an acronym. Your improvements or your targets need to be specific, so you pick out a specific weakness. They need to be measurable, so something that you can use to gauge if you've improved. So the number of participants in your group that went off understanding or could tell you the 3 teaching points is a measurable way of knowing that your explanation of them was better. Action orientated, so saying exactly what you're going to do and how it will look when it improves. Obviously they've got to be realistic and relevant, so saying you're going to go and do a level 4 coaching qualification when you've not done level 1, 2 and 3 is quite unrealistic. And ideally they're time based, so it could be you say that you're going to observe a coach at the local club for 3 weeks and then begin applying that after that, and the whole process might take you 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And there we have it. So assignment 4, reminding you that the criteria involve you carrying out a review of the planning and delivery of your coaching session, and we're looking at strengths and areas to improve, or strengths and weaknesses. And beyond that, we're looking at specific strategies that are detailed about how to improve your weaknesses, and being able to ideally justify why you've chosen those things or those strategies to improve, and that will be up there with distinction level.